The Browns' quarterback room has always felt like a pressure cooker. But lately, the heat has been turned up, all eyes locked on two young signal callers hidden behind the microphone noise and roster moves. Shedeur Sanders, exuding college dominance, has had flashes in practice that command attention. Gabriel, drafted earlier, has been placed ahead of him on depth charts. In media cycles, one man watches this duel like a hawk. Grossi, longtime Browns reporter. He's made no secret of his skepticism towards Sanders. And now, after a practice where Sanders reportedly looked sharp, Grossi snapped publicly. The clip hit like a grenade. Grossi, voice sharp, headlines ready, calling out Gabriel, questioning whether Gabriel can earn the kind of scrutiny and praise Sanders has been drawing. He challenged Gabriel's consistency, his poise under pressure, and implied that Gabriel's leadership may be overstated next to the buzz of Sanders. This wasn't a casual critique. This was Grossi losing it, taking what had seemed like media murmurs and turning them into a full-blown spotlight battle. In the weeks prior, Sanders confronted Grossi over persistent negativity. He once said to him, "Tony, I be hoping you have something positive to say about me. You always say negative stuff about me." That moment went viral, not a shout, but a challenge issued. The tension had been simmering for months. Practice reps, depth chart whispers, missed opportunities. Now it's spilled into public. Grossi has long pushed the narrative that Gabriel should be leaned on more. He's questioned whether Sanders is too flashy, too brand-driven, perhaps not pandemic enough for serious camp. Those critiques have always sat lightly with fans of Sanders. But after a dominating practice, the voices behind those critiques got louder, and Grossi became the loudest. Inside the practice facility, coaches and teammates saw the difference. Sanders was sharp, decision-making crisp, ball placement tight, command in the huddle noticeable. When thrown into simulated runs, he assumed pressure readings, audibles, adjustments. And while practice isn't a game, when a young quarterback stands out in that environment, observers take notice. Gabriel, meanwhile, had an uneven day. Some throws misfired, some reads looked slower. The contrast between their reps wasn't staggering, but enough to invite deeper scrutiny. Grossi pounced in analysis shows. He replayed clips, paused mechanics, compared mental rhythm. He didn't mince words. He called Gabriel's performance underwhelming in spots that matter. Public reaction followed quickly. Social media lit up with, "Grossi just exposed Gabriel." Sanders looked like a starter today. Grossi is scrambling. Dylan needed a statement. That wasn't it. Within the locker room, whispers echoed. Veterans noticing who commanded defense attention. Assistants discussing who got the good plays during team drills. No one confirmed it publicly, but inside, team dynamics were already shifting. Gabriel, a competitor by nature, took questions after practice. Calm, collected. He acknowledged mistakes. He promised consistency. He said he respects competition. He refused to let Grossi's critique knock him off balance. But the message was clear. The judge's gavel had dropped, and he was being tested. Grossi doubled down in post-game commentary. Gabriel was no longer just starter by default. He was being challenged in narrative and film. Grossi questioned whether Gabriel's leadership was earned or assigned. He asked whether the Browns were responding to media pressure rather than internal evaluation. The broader media landscape responded. Pundits replayed Grossi's rant. Some defended it as passionate journalism, holding players accountable. Others saw it as overreach, taking sides in a QB battle before game day. Shedeur Sanders got quiet press spotlight. After earlier criticism from commentators like Rex Ryan, Sanders had responded carefully. "We not on no negativity from now on." He began to speak rather than mime. His messages were consistent. Positivity, focus, letting work speak louder than words. The Browns traded Joe Flacco. Gabriel was named starter. Sanders was elevated to backup. Depth chart shifted. Questions about how much influence media narrative, internal evaluation, or external pressure guided those choices became unavoidable. Grossi's critiques started to look like more than reporting. They looked like a push, a campaign, especially given past tensions between Grossi and Sanders, including that viral exchange over negative coverage. Gabriel, now in the spotlight, had to respond internally and externally. Coaches praised his preparation, but also emphasized their belief in development. They couldn't be seen flipping, due to media pressure alone. In interviews, Gabriel addressed Grossi's comments. He denied the attacks were personal, said he's focused on getting better. He stressed respect for all quarterbacks in the room. That said, the narrative had changed. Gabriel was fighting to own it again, not just perform. Sanders, from the sideline, continued to train. He watched tape. He showed up on time. He avoided drama. His silence became part of the counter-narrative, drama-free confidence. In that, his critics gained another question mark. Can you critique what doesn't respond? Can you criticize what quietly builds? The camera narrative shifts. Grossi, who once had the mic without contest, now finds himself part of the story he covers. Analysts asked whether he overstepped. Does a reporter get to sway roster battles? Can media narrative force a team's hand? Where's the line? Inside the Browns organization, front office and coaches work quietly to balance evaluation, expectation, optics. They saw Sanders practice, they saw his growth. They saw Gabriel's early mistakes. And now media voices like Grossi are pressing more than ever. Gabriel had to prove he wasn't reactive. He delivered in follow-up practices, better reads, sharper decisions, fewer mental errors. He intended to show Grossi was wrong. The leadership was internal, not external. Shedeur, meanwhile, remained poised. His time was coming. The elevated depth chart gave him proximity. The media chatter gave him stage. His earlier practice flashes, now magnified, pressed Gabriel's margin of error. Grossi, in his defense, would argue he's shining light where he sees gaps. That quarterback rooms should be under accountability. That fans shouldn't be shielded from truth. But questioners ask, when does critique become interference? When does reporting become narrative engineering? As the season approaches full tilt, the stage is set. In games, every snap, every interception, every read will be viewed through the lens of this media battle. Gabriel must perform under that glare. Sanders must prove the hype isn't hollow. And Grossi? He watches, pencils ready, waiting for what comes next. One critique away from delivering either vindication or regret. In this NFL life, the pen often fights alongside the cleats. Reporters shape storylines. Analysts guide narratives. But on game day, only performance speaks. Dillon Gabriel, now, carries more than a playbook. He carries the weight of media doubt. Shedeur Sanders, in silence, carries potential. A quiet storm brewing on the sideline. And Tony Grossi? He sits with mic in hand, try to hold the mirrors steady. But mirrors crack when pressure meets narrative. This isn't just a battle for starter. It's a war for story. And when it comes down to it, the field will show who's drafting truth and who's drawing headlines. Watch close, because sometimes the loudest voice isn't the one talking. It's the one delivering.